I would go home every week or two. My parents they weren't against it either, but I didn't realize that, my mum took it a lot harder than I expected. My dad walked into the room one morning because I just got home from work and I was like literally about to go to sleep. And he said, you should be a little bit more aware of the fact that your mum's like taking it quite hard. She hasn't like necessarily said anything to me because I think she was conflicted between knowing that, hey, I've got to let my son go out and move out. But, at the same time, because I'm the oldest in the family, it's like my first child going out on their own. She felt that she had a responsibility to still look after us. That was quite shocking to me, hearing about that for the first time, because that was the first time I actually felt quite conflicted about what I should do in this situation. Like, should I continue to move out or should I move back home? Because 19 is like, now in context, I'm 32, 33. It's like, you know nothing.
Before we get started on today's episode, we would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which this podcast is recorded, the land of the Darug people. We would like to acknowledge and pay respects to our elders past and present and the next generation coming through. Now, onto today's episode. Welcome to the Level Asian podcast. Today, we're talking to each other about leaving the nest and the big steps of moving out. You'll hear about our own experiences and thoughts on moving out, from the pros and cons to its impacts on our mental health, to dealing with the idea of aging parents. You'll hear about Noel's extended Italian family, Davie's throwbacks to granny flat parties, Can's stories of having challenging roommates, and Kelsey's experience of balancing mixed parent dynamics with ethnic versus non-ethnic perspectives. We've also got some helpful advice for anyone considering taking the leap and moving out. Enjoy the episode.
Welcome to the Level Asian podcast. Today we will be talking about a much requested topic, which is leaving the nest and all the guilt that follows with doing that. So today each of our hosts have varying experiences with leaving the nest, especially like different stages of our lives when we've done it or attempted to, or are still wanting to but haven't been able to do it yet. So we'll have a pretty good range of different experiences. So I think it might be best to start with who moved out the youngest.
Do you want to introduce Kelsey for this first episode?
Yeah, people are probably wondering like, who the fuck?
Okay, so that's a good idea. Clearly this is not Viv. Cool. Today is also a special episode because we have Kelsey in, and Kelsey is our editor. So she's been the person behind the scenes getting all these episodes out, edited every week.
She's the hard worker that's making this happen.
Mm-hmm. And cutting out all the crap that we talk.
Yes.
Especially Davie.
Yes.
But today Kelsey's joining us because she also has a lot of interesting perspectives to share as well. So yes, let's start with who moved out at the youngest age.
Well, do we have... Okay, so I moved out at 19. I don't know if... Am I the earliest?
Wait, does moving out to the granny flat count as...
I don't think it does.
Look, it's still like 10 meters away from the nest, so...
Yeah, but
It is. I would say it's still moving out.
It's still out of the nest,
Yeah.
but I moved out. Like, I just wanted to point that out if it was. But yeah, 26 is when I moved out.
21 for me.
21?
23.
23. Okay, so I went the earliest. You want me to go first?
Yeah, tell us about...
Okay, so I moved out as soon as I went... I started full-time work as soon as I could. And then moving out was a bit of an interesting one because I didn't actually put that much thought into moving out. Because you know how like one of the things when you move out, you don't actually think, when you're young, you don't think that hard about who you're going to live with and everyone's habits and things like that, right? Now we're like, a lot of us like live by ourselves, so we sort of understand. And I ended up living in a shared apartment in Redfern with 4 other mates, plus a female who was a friend of one of my mates in a 2-bedroom apartment. So you can do the maths, you can figure out like how the sleeping arrangement works. And this was during university, and I was juggling like graveyard shifts. I used to work in hotels, so I'd do like overnight shifts, and I'd come home, pretty much in the morning about 7, 8 o'clock, and then I'd try and get some sleep on top of like uni. So it was like, I think I was paying $100, $120 a week at the time. I think the rent in total was about $600, $700 a week. And moving out was something that, I always wanted to move out because I thought like I as an Asian, not that my parents ever gave me pressure to stay. I moved out because I wanted the freedom and the flexibility to do whatever I want, whenever I wanted as well. And I learned a lot moving out, which, we can get into later, like how mixed it feels, because there's a lot of good things and there's a lot of terrible things with moving out. On your own. So yeah, that's the backstory.
Nice. So I was, similar, 21, still in uni. So I moved out with friends from uni as well. So it was 2 guys, 2 girls, including myself. Moved out to a terrace in Leichhardt. And we were paying about like 800 and something in total. And I was paying the most because I chose the room with the ensuite because I didn't want to share a bathroom
the
with,
master.
like, 3 other people. But yeah, so same thing. I was still like working in retail and, uni full time as well. Reason I wanted to move out was mainly because, I was living in a very small place with mum as well. Like it was pretty much a granny flat behind a main house. And, I was getting older and I was like, this is too much space and we're just kind of in each other's spaces all the time. So at the time we were in Marrickville and, the people we were living with, like our neighbors were this Italian family and they were kind of like adopted us because, we had no other relatives here really. So leaving the home was not only like kind of a slap in the face to my mum, but it was also a slap in the face to like our entire extended Italian family. They were just like, yeah, because they like really looked after us. Like they gave me food. They invited us to lunch every Sunday. Like they really
That's
treated us.
wholesome.
Yeah, like as part of the family. Like they really took us in.
Yeah.
And then so when I was leaving, I was kind of naive enough to be like, I can manage this. I'm working part-time.
Yeah. That's how I felt.
The rent,
Yeah.
So I didn't intend to come back, but everyone was like, you'll be back. And I was like, no. 6 months later, I came back and with my tail between my legs. And I felt really defeated. But again, I did learn a lot and we can get into that later, but it was a good growing experience. But it was also like, it's a really stupid decision in hindsight, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Kelsey, I'll let you talk too. Tell me about yours.
In short summary, I moved out, and same as Noel, I came back. This was with my ex-partner, and really I just wanted that flexibility and freedom. And I think at that stage, I thought, you know what? I need to test the waters with our relationship. I think we're ready to head to that stage, right? My dad, being a semi-traditional Filipino man, was very against it. He was like, no, like, stay home. You got to stay home. And I'm like, no, Dad, it's fine. But my mom, on the other hand, she was like, no, I agree with you. Like, you won't know if you're actually compatible until you live with someone, right? Yeah. She was right. And I moved back home. And now I'm kind of stuck in this phase of wanting that flexibility.
Well, I remember we were talking about it and you were like, you moved out and then your brother took your room. And
pretty much replaced me.
So you're like sort of feeling like you're sort of halfway in between things at the moment.
In limbo pretty much,
Cool.
Yeah, so for me, I think I had 2 stages of moving out. Obviously, I moved out to the granny flat, which was like, 5 meters away from the main house. Yep. I did that when I was 25. I think I was forced to move out, actually. The reason, I'll tell you why. It's a pretty funny story. So my dad wanted to build a granny flat. And his idea of building a granny flat was he can keep us there longer, So he got us to pay for the granny flat out of our. So
you pay, as in you and your brothers?
Yeah, me and my brothers paid for the granny flat to build. And he also wanted to increase the value of the house. And he asked us for money. We thought, you know what, it's an investment. And whatever Dad wants, like he really wanted it. He kept mentioning it a few times. So we pulled in some money and then we built the granny flat. So we thought Dad was actually going to rent it out. Like that was the goal. But then he's like, no, you guys move in. So like,
laid a trap.
So so he laid a trap for me to stay there. And to be honest, I think like I didn't mind that much. I didn't want to move out that quick because my brother, my oldest brother moved out, and my second oldest brother was planning to move out with his missus. So I wanted to be there for mum and dad because, mum and dad aren't doing so well. They were sick. One of them sick, and they needed someone to take care of them. So when I was 25, I moved to the granny flat and I felt like a bit of independence, but my laundry was still clean. Clean my mum.
Oh, you still had the best of that.
I think I had the best of both worlds. Mm-hmm. I had my own time away from everything, and I also had a roommate, which was like my brother. And then what happened was about when I was 30, I decided to buy a place and move in with my missus, and this is the place where we're at now. So thank you very much, Davie.
Yes, thank you.
So
Davie's charging us $300 an hour to use the space.
It's because our studio's not ready.
Yeah, so I have a mortgage for this, and it's very expensive, and it is a very it's like a love-hate relationship I have with moving out. One thing is that everything seems like a mess all the time. Like, remember how back in the day where your bedroom would be messy?
Yep.
And your mum would tell you off? And now the whole house is my bedroom and the whole house is messy. And then when people come over and they're like, Davie, I think you need to
People said that before.
Yeah, people say that all the time. They come over my house. You're like, wow, it is really bad.
Yeah, but I didn't tell you to clean up your house. I just come and go, whoa.
No, people tell me to clean up my house. So that's the hate part, and the love part is like, yeah, being independent, being able to do nothing and then not coming home after a tired day and having someone nag you or lecture you or tell you to put some clothes on or go to the toilet. Like, yeah, I love that part. I enjoy that part a lot. Where no one's telling me to go to the toilet when I need to. Yeah, so that's my story.
Okay.
Yeah, independence around toilet routine is important. Okay, so I guess the next thing to segue into is more around the pros and cons of moving out as well. So obviously we touched on independence and freedom, but there is a lot of things that you don't realize all the cons until you actually do it.
Yeah.
I mean, the roommate experience, I guess, is what you and I had a bit more of.
I'm telling you, this is why I really touched on the fact that you got to be really careful when you move out with who you live, because I was living with, like I said, 4 other dudes plus a female. She had a room for herself. I didn't even say that bit until this, but she had a room for herself, which meant we had a 1 bedroom left between 5 guys. So the arrangements were pretty bad. And just like you guys, I moved back after 5 months because I couldn't deal with it. As soon as the lease ran up, it was a 6-month lease because I moved in a month later. I was like, I'm going back home. And one of the things I remember I think it was about 1 or 2 months into moving out, I would go home every week or two. And about a few weeks in, and me making a decision to move out was like, it's my decision. I didn't really consult my parents or anything like that. And my parents they weren't against it either. But I didn't realize I was, naive, 19-year-old guy. Didn't realize that, my mum took it a lot harder than I expected. So my dad walked into the room one morning because I just got home from work and I was literally about to go to sleep. And he said, oh, you should be a little bit more aware of the fact that your mum's taking it quite hard. She hasn't necessarily said anything to me because I think she was conflicted between knowing that, hey, I've got to let my son go out and move out. But, at the same time, because I'm the oldest in the family, it's my first child going out on their own. She felt that she had a responsibility to still look after us, because 19 is now in context, I'm 32, 33. It's you know nothing. That was quite shocking to me, hearing about that for the first time, because that was the first time I actually felt quite conflicted about what I should do in this situation. Should I continue to move out or should I move back home? And she would my mom's really wholesome. She would, every time I'd go home for the week, she'd cook me literally a week's worth of food.
Wow.
So I never actually had to really cook. I cooked, but as in it was not out of necessity. And I even got you get sick of eating leftovers basically by the 5th day in. And you're fuck, this is the 5th day of food. It's too much. But yeah, she would look after me in that sense. But it was an easy decision to move back after 5 months because the guys I stayed with were just disgusting.
I can only imagine the stench.
I tell you, these guys would literally play World of Warcraft in their tidy whities on the floor, and I'd come home to that in the mornings.
Wow. So the laundry, the cooking must be very tough.
Oh, dude, it was. I would come back and they would have pizza boxes everywhere on the floor.
Oh man.
And the lowest point of that that experience was coming home. All the beds were taken, and not even taken by my roommates, taken by guests who stayed over for the night. And I ended up sleeping on the floor somewhere in the living room with a beanbag as my pillow and some random person's jacket as a blanket. And I was like, fuck this shit, I'm going home. I couldn't deal with it. So there's when you say pros and cons, there was definitely, I think there was more cons to me in that first experience than there were pros. I was it was an easy decision to move back home. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think I had similar things. I don't think my experience with roommates was as bad as yours. I think we had adequate amount of space.
Get this. I had to pay their rent most of the time.
I didn't know that you wanted to say that, but
no. I'm saying it because and these guys are we're still good mates, and they knew at the time they were in a lot of ways they were being drop kicks. A lot of them would cancel their shifts for work on the morning.
For an international guest, what is a drop kick?
A drop kick basically is someone who just doesn't work, is just a bum, basically.
Plays World of Warcraft in their whitey
Plays a lot of
tighties.
Warcraft in their tidy whities. Plays like,
And the
you know,
literal term is that, you know, when you're a kid and you just came out, you get dropped and then
We don't condone that.
Strange
yeah, we don't
It's a
do that.
strange slang.
I'm a parent. I don't do that. So these guys, I'd have to also pay for their rent because they would cancel their shifts on the morning of like work, and they would only do like 2 or 3 shifts a week. So if you cancel these, like, dude, you got no income coming in. I think some of them were on Centrelink. I'm pretty sure some of them are.
youth allowance.
Yeah, they're on youth. Yes, exactly. Youth allowance or New
Shout out
Start.
to Youth Allowance.
Yeah.
Thanks, Annalie.
And then you have to pay for like not just rent, food, and all that sort of stuff, right? Those guys didn't go back home as much as I did. So, and so the sad thing was also I would go out like and buy groceries for everyone, and they'll be like, yeah, I'll pay you back. Never didn't see that money back for like months. And there was another low point there with the food, which was I remember buying a box of like party pies. It was like, you know, those big 30 packs. And I was like, really looking forward to it, you know? And I was like, I went out, I was like at work, and I came back and like it got eaten. Like it was gone already that day. And I was like, there's only one mate at the time who was there. So I knew who it was. And I was like, dude, like you ate all the fucking pies. I was like, you could have eaten like half of them or like 10 of them. You ate all 30 of them in a single sitting. And he like full justified it by saying, he's like, what else am I going to do? So he was like thinking like, oh, like I'm here. I got to eat. So I might as well open the fridge and like eat it. So I was like, fuck. I was like, this is not working out, both financially and also like just as a lifestyle. It was terrible. But anyway, there's a lot more stories, but I won't go into it too much right now.
Shout out to all the roommates listening.
Yeah, sorry, voice.
You want to name drop them?
Maybe later in the episode.
No, mine was okay. I mean, it was definitely like a party house where I was living because we had like 3 stories basically. But it was a terrace. It was like very narrow. And yeah, no, we're all, you know, uni age. So yeah, like we had parties every week and, you know, it was a lot of cleaning up after because you're living
Or
there.
lack of cleaning.
And yeah, gate crashes. And then, you know, those are, I guess, the downsides. But yeah, we had to move out. We had signed a 6-month lease and all of my roommates wanted to move out after the lease ended due to various reasons. But I think it was just the fact that like rent was expensive, you know, inner west. Not everyone was working as much. I was working the most, actually. I was still working like 25 to 30 hours on top of uni just to be able to afford to live there. So, you know, sometimes I come home from a night, like a late shift, and then there'd be a party. I'm like, cool. But then it's like next morning, it's like, you know, I got to clean this up now. That's cool.
Yeah.
But I mean, the thing for me was I didn't go back home that much, even though home was very close. Home was like a 15-minute drive away, you know, and I had my car, so it was fine. But I think it kind of, I kept my distance, mainly because I felt like there was a lot of judgment if I went back. And I also wanted to prove that I could survive independently without assistance as
So
well.
did your mum give you a hard time for moving out?
She knew that she couldn't stop me, but I don't think she was super happy about it at the beginning. But I think she was. I mean, I'm very fortunate in that she's supportive of my decision, and she knew why I wanted to do it. And and I think she knew it was a good growth experience for me. But at the same time, I think me being young and dumb was kind of just like, you know, while she offered support, I also didn't want to take it out of pride, basically. Yeah, because I was like, you know, I could do this. I could live off like, you know, microwave meals and work, you know, for 30 hours and go to uni and like, you know, balance everything. And I think I was doing okay. Like for those 6 months, my life was like fairly balanced. Like I was able to stay on top of everything. And I was able to learn how to do that because, you know, at home, I wouldn't have the same opportunities to. So I think it was a good growing experience. But going back home and, you know, after the lease ended and all my roommates wanted to go back, I was like, well, there's no way I can kind of find 3 other people to, you know, transfer the lease over in a short amount of time. So we kind of had no choice but to give up the place. And I think I was the only one that wanted to stay. But I think I was kind of like blind to it as well because, you know, as much as I felt like I was being very productive at the time, I also knew that it wasn't sustainable. And so, yeah, I had to move back and... yeah, there was definitely a lot of shame. I felt like so defeated when I went back.
She give you shit for it? Like
she did not. No, I mean, like it was just more like, yeah, I guess it was more self-inflicted. I think, you know, going back and the way I did things was like I didn't handle it very well. Like I moved all of my shit. I took all of my stuff, like planning to just never come back. So moving back was like, shit, I've got all my stuff, but then there's like not a lot of space for it. And so, you know, I kind of like had to put some of it in storage and kind of like go and sleep on a couch for a bit because I took my bed and stuff. And it was just like, yeah, it wasn't great because it kind of felt like I was in that limbo stage as well. Because I was ready to I did not plan for coming back. I did not have a backup plan. I just did it impulsively, I guess, or a bit, I guess, tunnel vision in my approach. So
I'm curious though, like when you moved back, was everything there for you, or did they use the space completely?
Yeah, like it wasn't there for me. So I was like basically like sleeping on.
You're like a guest in your own house.
I was basically like a guest in my own house, and it wasn't. Yeah, it was a small place. It was a very small place. So I had even less space than before when I moved out. So
Yeah, that would have been tough. Like that would be pretty hard for you because you don't even have a place
your own
your own
private space.
but it was also just the like I told you so.
Yeah, but they didn't say that, right? Like it was just indirectly.
It was implied.
It was definitely implied. It's like, oh yeah, 6 months.
Yeah, welcome back, son.
But it was also like our extended family as well.
The Italians.
Yeah. They were just like, and to be fair, like I mean, look, they loved us so much, and because like Italian culture, and I mean they're very family centric as well. You know, similar to Asian culture, and you know, for them it was kind of like they want to keep their kids at home just as much as Asians want to keep their kids at home. So like I kind of offended everyone.
You offended the Italians.
I
in the process.
offended my entire surrogate family by moving out and then coming back. And you know, they didn't say anything, but I felt guilty and I felt shame, even though they didn't kind of rub it in my face or anything. I think just me being back in that space and yeah, it was awkward. I felt awkward about it.
I can relate. I'm currently like a gypsy in my own house right now. Like all of my stuff are in like storage boxes or like Woolies bags,
Oh, really?
Coles bags. Yeah.
So did you have a place when you moved back? Like did you still have? Oh wow!
I'm still living like a gypsy right now.
So she's living the experience now.
Yep.
Oh wow!
My brother.
Like I find it very surprising because like every room in my house is like still there
Left.
for
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
But it did surprise me when you told me. I was
Yeah.
like, your brother moved into your room. I was like, wow.
And he's not moving back. So I'm just like,
Where was he before this?
he was sharing a room with my other brother.
Oh, that's why.
That makes so much sense.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm just like couch surfing.
Yeah.
So-
So you're really keen on
Oh,
moving
100%. I want like my own like space where I can decorate it and like do whatever, like spin around, dance. No one's watching me. You don't realize until you come back how annoying your family can be. They're just up your ass like constantly. Just like as soon as you get home,
Davie can relate to that.
as soon as you get home from work or wherever, like 100 questions, and you're just trying to like decompress from like the day. It's like, man, just chill. But you can't say that because then your parents will get really mad.
So what's the cons of moving out? Did you have any?
Not really.
Oh wow.
If
Yeah.
anything, it's just like coming home from a late night or whatever, and you've got like a shit ton of laundry to do. Like,
Yeah.
oh, fuck.
But you could deal with that. Like,
Yeah,
that was acceptable.
Yeah.
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 I think for me, I did the opposite for you guys. Like personally, you would have to say that I just followed the route of, you know, the Asian ways, which is like stay at home as long as possible. I think the pros was that, you know, my mum needed help and needed to be looked after. And my oldest brother was traveling at the time. He was living in UK. And I didn't want my brothers, I felt like I was spoiled when I was younger. So I didn't want my brothers to have to take on the pressure of looking after mum and dad. I wanted them to like move on and like, you know, go move out. Yeah, because they, you know, spoiled me when I was a kid. So that's why I just said, hey guys, like we actually had a heart to heart with my brothers. And I said, guys, like I think you guys should just move out and let me focus on looking after mum and dad. Partly because I wanted my brother to move out of the granny flat.
You wanted the place for yourself.
Yeah, I wanted the place for myself because I used to chuck a lot of parties. But that was but I also wanted to look after mum and dad. So I think that was the pro for me, like being close to mum and dad, but also having the space. So if you guys can move to a granny flat, I actually highly recommend it.
Good arrangement.
It's a really good arrangement because mum and dad would do the laundry, would iron my clothes for work. And sometimes they'll cook for me. I didn't really eat their food anyway. I just made my own food and cooked for myself. And I was able to bring my partner back and also have parties. I still had to clean the house, which was okay. And it was a 3-bedroom granny flat, guys. So I had like a gym in one room. I had my brother's old room and I had like a full lounge room, and it was just amazing for me. Would have karaoke on the weekends as well. So pros and cons of that. That was not much cons. But then I decided to move out of my missus as well when I was 30. And to be honest, there's no cons of that at all. Like you're 30 years old, you got to move out eventually. So
can I ask? Because if you, like as someone who moves out at 30 during your 20s, did you feel any form of not shame, but you're like, shit, I still haven't moved out. Like I really want to move out because otherwise, like, what do my mates think? Like, how am I perceived as someone who's, because you're running a business as well. You're a business owner as well.
Yeah, I was running a business.
You're a business owner living essentially at home.
I think I wasn't embarrassed because, or shame because I felt like it was a sense of duty to look after mum and dad. Yeah, to be there for mum and dad. And also to relieve the stress of my brothers because I felt like they were going through a lot already. And my brother, and then halfway through, my brother came back as well when my second oldest brother was still living at the granny flat around 27.
He was overseas, right?
Yeah, he came back from the UK. And I just could see the stress that he had moving back home.
Because he'd been away for so long.
Yeah, he'd been away, independent, same with you guys. And the guilt and the feeling of like embarrassment that he had to come back to home to find and then find another place to rent. So I was like, man, you need to get out ASAP. Like you need to take care of your mental health. Like I need you out because you're causing me stress just by looking at you and talking to you. So I was like, I'm not having a good time right now with mum and dad anyway, so I don't really care. And friends would come over and have parties at my place anyway, so they didn't really care as well because they can't have parties at their place because it's too small. Whereas my one is a granny flat, it's massive, 3-bedroom place, and my second oldest brother, when he was living with me, nothing would wake him up, so I could have.
So he's not bothered by it.
Yeah, I could have massive.
Sounds like the perfect roommate.
Yeah, he was. He was literally the perfect roommate.
Now he's the perfect neighbor.
I remember he used to like just when he knew he had a party, he'd just go out or like stay at partner or girlfriend's
He would even
place.
sleep it.
Yeah, or sleep through it.
Yeah. So he was amazing, and he's very introverted too. So he would just stay in his room. So
I have a question, not just for you, but for everyone. Because one of the big things I feel like when we put the questions out, and I don't know if Viv, there was anything particular in the responses to the questions, but I think people feel a lot of strain with their parents' relationship as they stay at home because of the nagging, because of all the issues. And I might be like taking role, and Noel's like limelight here because there's probably a point in there about it. But I definitely had a strain in the relationship, just to like kick this off, because you do the whole teen angst and you rebel against your parents, and I think my mum was that person who constantly was just like the nagging type.
The strain while living with
living with them.
Yeah.
And it's all out of love. It's all out of like good intentions, and like I love my mum and everything. And I think I remember we had like this big fight. I don't remember what it was, but I remember my grandma was from overseas and she was staying with us, and I literally said to her, I said, "I hate you."
Wow.
Yeah, like
wow.
I that was the one and only time I said it, and she was like so cut up by it, obviously. And like I was so.
What led you to saying that?
I can't remember what it was, but I'm pretty sure it was just like the incessant nagging about something, and I just couldn't deal with it. And so and then I'd try and like explain to her, or we'd have an argument, and it wasn't going anywhere because she's like a hot-headed type person, so she'd shout, and then I'd raise my voice, and we'd both be shouting at each other. It's like not going anywhere. And then so like to end it, I was just like, basically said I hate you or something to that nature. And then that was the first time I saw. My grandmother was like trying to be the mediator. I think my dad was working at the time, so he wasn't even at home. And she like pulled me aside. And I think I was only like 17 or 18 or still in high school. And she said to me, like, it was the one and only time I'd seen my grandmother cry. Cause she was like saying, she's like, on one hand, I'm seeing, my daughter, which is my mum, really upset. I think my mum was crying as well. And then seeing me so pissed off by it, she was like in that sort of rock and a hard place. And she's like, this is not good. Like she basically said to me, she said, you need to talk to her. So, after calming down, we kissed and made up. It was great. But that, like these sort of things are like what I felt a lot of pressure to, this is one of the big motivators why I wanted to move out.
The mental health benefits are just, man, that's like the biggest benefit.
Yeah.
Like just the clarity and, the space. And I think the space is like really, really important to be able to, I guess.
The distance.
The distance, like it's like what they say about, distance makes the heart grow fonder.
It's 100% true.
Fully does.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think as much as like our parents love us, there's this thing within Asian culture where they kind of, it almost feels like a coddling kind of love. And yeah, it restricts growth, and, they may nag us with the best of intentions, but again, it does take its toll mentally, even though there is good intentions there. And I think there are some problems or experiences that, they can't shelter us from, and that we need to just experience on our own to learn. Like, you got to get burnt to kind of learn, So yeah, I think it's all been worth it. I think from my experience, like, and that wasn't even just the first time. Like, I tried to move out and came back multiple times in my 20s.
Oh.
So I mean, I was trying to do it a lot. And I've only been able to successfully move out at 29, like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And that was only after we started Social Wave.
Yeah.
And that was the first time where I didn't have roommates either, where I could actually afford to just like rent on my own. And like, my mental health has never been better.
Yeah.
Sounds so nice.
Yeah.
This episode is produced and brought to you by Social Wave. Social Wave is a strategic content marketing agency helping businesses grow revenue using video, podcasts, and SEO. Head on over to socialwave.com.au to find out more. Now back to the show.
I actually can relate to Can a lot because I saw that in my brother. Like, my brother was going through a lot.
Tension.
Yeah, the tension.
Between the relationship.
And but the order, like, it triggered a memory for me because I actually remember us brothers, we sat down one day and we said, this isn't working financially for us because we're all paying like rent and board to our parents, and we're not getting the space we want, and we're not being able to, like, we want to buy our own place one day, and this isn't working at all. Like, we're just following the path that our parents want to set out for them, which is benefiting them a lot. Like, benefiting them because we pay for the granny flat, we pay for their house, their mortgage, and everything like that. This is everything beneficial for them. We had to talk to our parents about it, and we said, hey, we need to move out and we got to stop paying you. And there was a massive fight, like, my oldest brother was the one that led the talk with my parents. And I remember my parents said, like, it's a, they didn't say Asian kid, but as a kid, like, as you're my sons, you have to look after us. Like, he's like, you have to. And I think at that time, like, I didn't think he meant it that way, but that hurt my brother so much. Like, my oldest brother, he's like, because my oldest brother was like 34 at that time, and he was coming back, and he's like, I could see in his eyes, he's just like, I've been doing this my whole life for you guys. And sorry, I'm getting a bit teary from it because I remember watching my brother go through the mental health, and I said to my brother, and this is the reason why I stayed back, and I said, I don't want you going through this. I actually don't want you going through this because this is killing you inside. So I said to him, I can take it. Like, there's nothing wrong with my relationship with mum and dad. I just don't listen, and I just backchat, and I can be a spoiled brat. So I'm actually mentally okay. But you're dying inside.
But he was like a train wreck, was he?
Yeah, he was a train wreck. He was mentally...
What was it? Like, what was he like?
He just felt so much hatred and trauma from not being able to have anything because he's been making 6 digits his whole life. Like, his whole life he was making that much money, but he didn't have a house and he didn't have a place.
He was quote unquote successful.
Yeah, very successful, traveling the world, making a lot of money, but he didn't have anything because he gave everything up for our family. And then mentally, I just saw him and the way he was going, and it was going worse and worse, and he was becoming more like angry at everyone, parents, family, and friends, because he just felt like, I've done this for everyone.
A lot of built up resentment.
Yeah. And I saw that, and I just went, man, you need to go. Like, I just go. I don't care about anything, and I'll pay for everything. So that's partly the reason why I started my business, partly the reason why I just worked my ass off. But that's, like, I remember that fight that my parents had with my brother, and it was bad because we stopped talking for like a month, and we still lived at the granny flat. So it was very strange, yeah. So that would just be in the granny flat, like at the front of the house, and we'll be at the granny flat, and the brothers weren't talking to the parents. It was terrible, yeah. But when we kissed and made up, my brother ended up instigating it and having a chat to my parents and said, look, we're going to always look after you. And I think it's to be positive about this, and it's not our parents' fault. You know,
That's their reality.
Yeah, they're sick and they have to rely on us. And I think if they could work, they would have. And I think it's our fault. I personally blame myself. We blame ourselves that they got sick because they, went through such hardship in, 20 years ago. And they put themselves in a point where they can't work anymore.
I was thinking the other day about your, how you, like your mum's not well. And we were talking about this just before the podcast. And like, there's a guy who I've been seeing a lot of podcasts lately, also his book, a guy called Dr. Gabor Mate. And he's this, he's like a childhood development expert. He's a doctor, he's a physician, and I think he's Hungarian, but he's like lives in Canada. And the book is about how all these mental health diseases like ADHD, Crohn's disease, autoimmunes, schizophrenia, all these, they're caused by, he believes, like a level of trauma. And even thinking about, your parents and your mum, like sort of fleeing like Vietnam, like that is like being on a boat, and like that's fucking, like I can't even imagine the level of trauma. In my limited understanding, because I've had like my own share of like mental health issues, so I can like things like they say the body keeps count, and like you see physical manifestations of your stress and your anxiety and depression. I 100% believe it, and I feel like there is probably a big contributing factor with that stuff. That's probably why your parents got sick, because of all the stress and shit that they had to deal with, like moving to a new country.
Like, you got to put it into perspective. That's why I don't blame our parents at all. Like, I feel like angry at times, but I don't blame them. And I respect them so much, because if I compare, if I was still in Vietnam, like if they stayed in Vietnam,
could have been worse.
Yeah, I don't think my life would be that great. But yeah, like I talked to my parents about this, and well, they used to tell me all the time when I was a kid. They scared the crap out of me. But my dad used to say that he was on a boat with mum, and she was pregnant at that time too. And they were fleeing the country, and they had to go really quiet with no light in the boat, because there was pirates. So they were fleeing the country, and they were on the boat, and they would hear these knocks on the boat, and they were really like it felt like they were hitting an iceberg, but it wasn't an iceberg. It was human bodies. And he told me about like what they look like. And
is that just other people who were fleeing as well and just like didn't make it?
Capsized or pirates. Some of them had no clothes on because they were raped.
Fuck.
It was bad. And I was a kid when he told me about that. And he also bloody showed the face of how they looked.
What do you mean?
He was like he actually like, and I was a kid, and it traumatized me. I couldn't sleep for days. Like, it was so bad.
Holy shit.
And he went through that. And then they went to Indonesia, which is where they were a refugee camp at. And that was very tough, because they had to separate my mum from my dad, and they couldn't speak a word of English, couldn't speak the language, because my mum was pregnant at that time, and she gave birth at that time in Indonesia.
Oh, so your brother was born in Indonesia?
Yeah. But the crazy thing is that my dad wasn't like there for her. Like, she couldn't be there. Like,
I definitely feel like there's...
Like, imagine that.
Yeah.
Doing that. Like, I can't even fathom doing that at all at this time. Yeah. Like, I don't think I could live like without Shirley being pregnant with my kid and not being able to be there for him, and trapped in another country that can't even speak English. Like, I
guess the point here is like, we're very privileged where we are now, dealing with like problems around like our parents nagging us to move out when they had like a whole set of other issues.
They didn't have the choice. They had to just flee the country most of the time.
Yeah.
I actually want to chat about Kelsey's parents' experience as well, because your parents are, well, you're obviously mixed. So they weren't first gen migrants,
mix are you
right?
first? What mix are you?
So I'm half Australian, half Filipino.
Whoa.
My dad is the Filipino one, and my mum's the Australian one.
Just to clarify.
Just to clarify, because I know it's not a very.
It's an assumption that it's the other way, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So my dad came here in the 80s. He was probably like in his late 20s, early 30s. Obviously, he was coming here to find better opportunities for himself. And his siblings came after.
Was he the first out of his siblings to come?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's a lot. That's a challenging
Yeah.
role in itself.
Yeah, I was talking to him about it yesterday actually, and he was telling me he was excited, but he didn't realize until he came here how fucking hard it was. And he was struggling, and he was really, really, really homesick because my Lola and Lolo, they like babied him. He was the favorite child, 1 of 5. Yeah, it was tough for him. It was tough. But he told me he had to go through that to be where he is now.
How did your parents react when you wanted to move out? Were they more accepting, or at least was your mum?
My mum was more accepting. Yeah, she said, you know, you need to do this so you can find out whether or not you're compatible with your partner. And well, mother's always right. And she was correct. So, yeah, my dad, he was not a huge fan of it.
Do you have
at all.
arguments or anything like that? Or
No. He wasn't stopping me, but he would just say things to me like, oh, I think it's, you know, I think you're doing the wrong thing. You know, I think you should stay at home for a bit, you know, save money so then you can buy a property
house, yeah.
yourself. Like, you're wasting your money on rent. I'm like, well, I need to do this because my mental health is going down. But yeah, he let me go. Like, I'm not going to learn until, you know, I go through it. And
Did the fact that you were the only daughter and the eldest daughter play an impact in his perspective?
I don't think so. I mean, maybe like a tiny bit just because, yeah, only girl, and he tends to baby me a bit more, even though I'm the eldest. Yeah, there's a clear contrast there. Like, he goes on to my brother's like, oh, like, yeah, you can go out with this chick and this chick. Look at that chickie baby over there. Oh, my God. And then with me, he's like, you're not my baby no more. Oh, my God. Like, pretending to cry. And then he was saying, like, when I was way younger, like, okay, you're not allowed to get married until you're 30. And I'm like, okay, Dad. No worries, yeah.
very protective.
Pretty late.
Yeah.
Did you have any plans, or like because I was reading an article about this last night, and it was the female was they struggle to, like, you know, talk to their parents to so they have to formulate a plan to try to move out. And sometimes I read about the article, and the article was like the girl actually had to pretend to move out with a friend
Instead of her partner.
Yeah.
Oh, they had to
instead of a
scheme,
Wow.
basically.
Yeah, and there had to be, and then after they moved out for a little while with a friend, then she told him that I'm moving out with my partner, but because she's Asian, she had to have separate bedrooms with her partner. Yeah.
Oh, they can't
Yeah.
sleep together in the
Yeah,
same bed.
so-
Because that's going to stop you.
Yeah, so I was wondering if you had any plan on it.
No
yeah, so
plan.
you just went,
Not that
you went right
extreme.
into
No,
it.
not that extreme, no.
So was that? Did you get into any fights or anything like that, or were they arguing with you? Did they try to do the cold shoulder on you by any chance?
No. They were pretty much saying, yep, go. Even though my dad wasn't.
He just had some
fan.
words that he had
Just
to.
the words say, yeah.
I was just going to say, like, the other perspective that I have is that I want to move out, but I'm not allowed to because I have to be married first, which I think is probably something along the lines of your article.
Your parents are traditional like that.
Yeah, my dad is very traditional, but my mum is more. I think if I push for a little bit more and I wrote down my plan and my financial plan, that would be okay.
You got to have a business proposition.
Yeah, exactly. I need to have like a 12-month business plan for them to be able to move out.
Yeah,
KPIs and everything.
I actually personally think that most Asian girls would have to have a business, some sort of plan to make it work. Like, you know, I have to be.
Is that because they think girls are a bit more like vulnerable? Is that?
I think yes, but also just my experience is like oldest child, blah, blah, blah. But I know that my parents rely on me to look after my siblings. And so once I'm out of the house, the authority is out of the house because they don't listen to my parents. So if I left, it opens up my sister to go overseas, my sister to go like move somewhere.
Oh, it's like Pandora's box.
Yeah. And my brother will do whatever he wants because he doesn't listen to my mum. It's only when I step in that they'll actually listen. So a lot of issues, if I left, I think I want to take responsibility because I will feel bad if something happens in the house. And also I can't have the peace of mind knowing my siblings are not 18, or my sister is, but they're not at that independence age yet. And my parents haven't given them enough independence. Whereas on the other side, it was like too much independence for me, but also at the same time not. Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah, I was going to say it's hard.
Yeah.
Like everyone's got a different experience.
I think this is also like a uniquely Asian Australian experience because I know, you know, I mean, I think Ken and I, since we would try to move out when we were studying, right, in uni. But, you know, in the States, there's this whole college culture of like going to a college that's not in the same
Yes.
city or a couple hours away.
Like you travel.
You travel.
Yeah.
And so you're already forced to leave the home at like 18. And you are already, you know, exposed to all these new experiences with like living with, the, you know, dorm
But I
mates.
would argue if you're Asian American, this must be really hard for you because you see all your friends moving to like interstate. And and then you having to convince your parents maybe that it's a good idea.
I think it's like the idea of going to a good college trumps the idea of moving
You're
out.
like, you got to go to Harvard. You're like, yep, go to Harvard.
Yeah, go to Harvard, live with whoever the hell you want. Like,
Have you guys actually heard of this thing in America? They call it the Asian kid dream.
What is it?
It's basically a kid gets a scholarship, like a full scholarship. So it's all full paid for. And they have to make sure it's on the other side of the state, like so 2 hours or like at least 2 hours away from their home. So they could be away from their parents. And also
close enough to come back and do laundry and get food.
no, actually I have to be
Like as far as possible.
as far as possible.
Yeah.
And also they get work experience or they get a guaranteed job after. So they have to actually financially depend on their parents too. So they would make sure that they got paid and they would just get out and go. So that's why they get all these student loans, because they just don't give a crap. They want to take care of
Like
their
that
mental
is
health.
more, they were willing to take on that risk versus having to like
That's
stay
their
at home.
dream, literally.
Yeah.
Because they just can't do it. They can't see any end goal of being at home. So they need to leave.
There was that Chinese quote that we were looking on Reddit, and I was looking at it because you showed me that, and I hadn't heard of this, but like the Chinese words were something like 养儿烦老, which basically means raise your child, and actually means like son. It doesn't even talk about like daughters. It's so like, because Chinese is so male dominated focus. So 养儿, and then 烦老 just means prevent, 老 means old. So in other words, it translates into have children as an insurance policy for when you get old. In other words, and this could be a very Chinese experience, but it's like you should have kids just so that they can look after you when you're older. And we're talking about leaving the nest here. This is a big component of it, because Chinese parents, for example, really, partly because they want to look after kids, but I think there's also a component of them saying you got to look after us when we get older, which is pretty fucked up. But at the same time, you can also understand where they're coming from as well.
Yeah, that's the other thing I also want to talk about is like, now that I guess you two have moved out permanently and with your own respective partners and starting a family, how do you navigate that whole thing of your parents getting older? And, I mean, your parents are living with each other still, so they've got each other, but at the same time, it's like, what kind of care are you going to put them into when they can't look after each other?
So I can chime into that. I think I'm very lucky. I have, 2 older brothers, so it's so much more easier. So we take turns looking after our parents, and we set like a weekly, or I do fortnightly, because I said I just can't do weekly. It was just too much for me. But we'll catch up on a weekly basis as a family. And instead of like getting our parents to cook for us, because our parents don't really cook anymore, we go out to eat. So we catch up with them there. And I actually try to slowly teach them, the new generation things, like teaching them how to get into Uber, because I'm not going to go physically drive them everywhere, because they're starting to expect that, right? Because they don't know how to use a GPS, and they only know
You like teach them life skills.
Yeah, so I'm teaching them like some things that will make my life easier as well. So teaching him how to get into Uber, teaching him how to like order food as well sometimes. So they have to always call me, and teaching them how to make payments as well, or just giving me the bills or send a photo to me so I can make the payment for them.
Or automatic payments, right?
Yeah, automatic payments. Yeah, or getting access to all their accounts so I can just do it easier, so I can look after them better. It's scary, like knowing that my parents have to go to Cabramatta or Bankstown, having to line up for hours, and during that time was COVID, so it was very scary for them to do that stuff. So I would make sure that I made my life easier by not having to always be there, but I could look after them remotely, which is being taught by COVID days.
But what about you, Kels? Because obviously you have the experience of a mum who's Western and then dad being Asian. Mm-hmm. Do you get that vibe from your dad where he expects you to look after him?
He does make passing comments. Like, he's not super serious about it.
Is your mum telling him to shut the fuck up?
Pretty much. He's like, don't put me in a nursing home. I'm like, don't worry. But yeah, he's not super hard on me in that sense.
All right. So you don't feel that sense of pressure?
No.
Okay.
How old are your parents, by the way?
They have a 10-year gap. So my dad's 62. My mum's 52.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So it's still young. They're still very young.
Relatively.
Yeah,
young.
and they exercise or quite active.
My dad, not so much. My mum, yeah, she's pretty active. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, so I mean, I've been kind of thinking about this a lot actually, because as an only child with a single parent,
Is there inherent pressure?
there's definitely an inherent pressure, and I feel like the last 2 years of living on my own has been awesome. I have a lot of mental clarity, and I can also focus on work a lot without feeling guilty, and then come back and just be a potato when I need to be, and just recoup. And it's been great, but yeah, it's been hard because mum, she didn't buy property here, and her plan was always to retire back in Burma. So she's invested a lot in putting all of her, all of my cousins through school, and they're all doctors and nurses and stuff now.
Is there the insurance policy?
Well, yeah, kind of. Yeah, but she has a really big family there. She has lots of brothers and sisters. I have hundreds of cousins, and
Whoa, hundreds.
a lot. There's a lot that I haven't even met. Okay. And so her whole plan was to retire where her family and her relatives are, because besides me, she's got no one else here. So, and it's fair enough. It's you want to retire and, live out your days at home where, you feel like you belong. So that was the plan, but Burma is not the safest place right now. There's still a lot of, political issues at the moment. So, and she is approaching retirement age as well. So I've got to kind of decide what to do in terms of that gap between when she can retire and go back to Burma.
But what does she expect of you? Is there an expectation to financially support, physically be there?
I don't know. There's not an expectation, but I feel like I have to, and I want to, and I feel like I should. I feel like I'm in a better position now to be able to. But then that also means that I may have to kind of give up my own independence now. Because of the whole thing about her, when she stops working full time, there's no point kind of her paying rent, especially in North Sydney where she works, where it's expensive. Right. So it's kind of well, if we're both paying rent, it may as well be a mortgage, right? And may as well kind of buy an apartment, like a 2-bedroom or something. But at the same time, that would also mean living together again.
You lose your independence again.
Exactly. But look, I think, that's something I got to learn how to navigate. But I think it's probably more about setting clear boundaries. She knows how hard I work as well, and she knows I need my own space too. And I'm an introvert as well, so sometimes I just don't want to deal with people, especially if I'm really tired. So I think it's just about kind of respecting each other's boundaries. And I wanted to kind of just enjoy her retirement, live her best life, and pursue all the things she wants to do.
But it's also hard. I don't know about your mum, but my mum affiliates her identity as being a mother first. So if the kids aren't around, I think she feels a bit lost. And my parents have made some comments in the past about me looking after them when they get older and stuff like that, but I've never felt pressure. I don't know if that's just because of who I am as a personality. I just don't, it's a lot of haha, yeah, we'll figure that out when we get there. Or it's you don't mean it. It's just, you say these sort of things as well. And then partly also because my dad's quite a, he's like a long-term thinker. So, I'd see little things back in the day where I'd, the letters, he'd have letters open, and one time I saw my dad, and this was, I think 6 or 7 years ago, he'd already started buying life insurance, So, that told me as even a younger person was all right, my dad's thinking about the future. He's always thinking about if shit goes wrong, I'm not putting pressure on my kids. Right. But on the flip side, there's also the traditional Asian thinking of, the kids looking after you, when you get older. I mean, I don't think it's something that I would never send my parents to a nursing home, partly because I've got my brother here as well. We've got enough support that I feel like we can do it. But at the same time, there is somewhat of a pressure that, you sort of have to be as close to your parents as possible. And I feel like the only pressure that I feel like moving out is the need to go back on a regular basis and visit them.
Yeah.
So obviously you guys will agree. To the point where I would get... I'd probably get WeChat messages from my mum multiple times a week to ask me if I'm coming home, for dinner or for
yep, I can relate.
You get that?
Okay. I get that all the time.
Yeah, all the time. And there's this massive guilt if I skip a week. I'll have a week where I'm really busy and I'm just I can't come back for a fortnight, and that eats me up inside because I know that my mum looks forward to that so much, us all coming back home.
I just want to say, Ken probably deals with this, but wait till you guys get married or you meet the other half's family, then it's double dose. You have to go and see your parents, and you have to go and see the other person.
Look, we're a bit lucky where, my parents and Iris's dad live like literally 2 blocks away from each other.
Yeah.
So they both live in the same suburb. He doesn't cook. Asian dad, just never been in the kitchen. And so he's now, because, Iris's mum passing away, has had to learn those life skills. So he's really independent. He's really ironically different to your typical Asian dad, where he doesn't need to see you. Like, he's living his best life now. Like, he's YOLO right now.
Yeah. That's like my mum. It's the same.
Yeah, just enjoying life.
Yeah, like when we meet
swimming,
up,
exercising.
Yeah, it's not even cooking. It's just like she's doing her own thing, and we meet up and we catch up.
That's
as
so
friends.
good, right? But I think a lot of people don't have this. I certainly with my family, like my mum attaches a lot of her identity and a lot of her enjoyment in life towards spending time with her kids. And I think my brother does a better job of this. Like, he actually goes home and like stays over for a night. I was like, I haven't done that in like 6-7 years. Well done, Tony. Tony does that, and that's his way of showing his love, and his thing. For me, it's Iris and I, we go back and visit her, and she cooks a big dinner, a big lunch, and it's like her way of showing her love, and I can tell she loves it. But yeah, I feel a lot of pressure when I skip a week or two, not going back.
Yeah, but I also want to say that there's best of both worlds in like, the Asian mentality or the mixed race mentality or the immigrant family compared to, Caucasian families. Because like I was watching a YouTube video about my Choni, like if everyone knows my Choni, he did a skit about this, and he said the comparison of, Caucasian families, they'll kick you out. Like once you're 18 or 20, it's like, son, you need to leave now. Whereas in Asian families, it would be like, like, oh, Dad, I want to move out. And it's like, no, you're not moving out. You're not my son.
Don't move out till you get married is the condition.
Yeah. So it's crazy because I had my friend over and we were speaking. We actually talked all night till 5 a.m. And he was telling me that it's very tough.
He's white, is he?
Yeah, he's Caucasian. And his parents are divorced, and he's they don't talk. Well, they still talk, but parents are divorced, and him and his brother got pretty much not told to get lost, but basically pressured to move out. And it was very tough for them because he would have preferred to stay at home.
I would argue that even like people who are like, say, non-Asian, for example, probably look at us and go, wow, these guys, family is everything. Yeah. Like there's grass is green on the other side. Like they're, probably jealous of it, and they wish that they had something like that.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. There's best of both worlds. So it's like, you talk a lot of shit about being Asian, but like, man,
we get it good.
Yeah, you got it good as well. Yeah. So I was like, yeah. So that's why I stay at home till you're 30, guys.
All right, so that's Davie's advice. Do you guys have any other advice for anyone who is deciding whether they should stay in the nest or leave?
Well, if your mental health is very low, go for it. But like, if you've got plans to like buy a place or whatever, I suggest stay as long as you can. Enjoy the babying.
Yeah. I just think it's we should be empathetic to our parents, because our parents have, like we talked about, some of the trauma that they've been through. But I think sometimes we misconstrue what our parents say and do with their intentions. Like, I think parents, I hear this saying, like my mom's like, what parent, and like this is not true, but she goes, what parent doesn't love their child, And I think that at least, everyone in this room, and for many people listening, your parents love you and your parents mean well and they want you to do well. But sometimes I think the intention can be taken the wrong way for, what they believe is their truth or their beliefs as well. So we have to understand where they're coming from. And you can only know that if you really understand how your parents grew up, what their experiences were like, to be able to then go that. Because I think there's this, I find, there's a bit of a toxic culture where it's all about like me, and it's all about our experiences, but when we haven't really understood what they've gone through as well. So I think if there's any advice, if you don't understand your parents' story or background, you should, because I think that will give you a big understanding of why your parents are the way they are, and why they tell you to do things the way they do things, and why there's pressure on this sort of stuff, because it probably comes from their own experiences as well.
Yeah, I guess I would say have a backup plan, because after trying and failing several times before, and maybe not even being able to continue living by myself for a while, have a backup plan, especially if like you don't have a place to go back to, or especially if you are dumb like me and try to maybe potentially burn a bridge. Don't do that. Have a backup plan. And but I think make the most of it while you're there. Like even if it's only going to be temporary, I think make the most of it to learn and grow and try new things and push yourself to see what you're capable of, because that's the best time to do it.
For me, then, like my suggestions was first, don't dwell on it so much. Like for me, like the cards were dealt. I had to stay. I felt like I had to stay, and if I compared myself with other people, of course I'm going to feel like crap, right? But I just went, what's more important right now? My brother's mental health, or my mental health. And at that point in time, my mental health, I was fine because I was the spoiled kid and I just backchat every time and it made me feel better. So I was like, I'm happy with that. I'll live with that. I'll live with the constant nagging for my brother's sake, just so he can live a good life. So for me, it wasn't that bad at all. Just know that sometimes it's not always going to be amazing as living with your parents, and just cope with that. And sometimes you're going to snap, but just be there to, reconcile and deal with that with your parents. So that's one thing. And the second thing is, have a plan. Like not just a backup plan, but have a plan before you go out on your own. You don't want to end up homeless or anything like that. Make sure you have money. Make sure you've saved up something. Make sure if you can't afford it, then move out with other people and bloody learn some life skills. Like
choose wisely who you move out with.
Yeah, like the people that stuff up all the time are the ones that just blindly jump into like moving out, and it's actually worse for their mental health because they're either living with someone they don't want to live with, or they can't make ends meet and they always just borrowing money, and then they end up with like a massive credit card debt. So it's just, or they're unhappy anyway. It's not moving out that was going to make them happy. They were just unhappy and depressed anyway, and they need to go see someone. Yeah, so it's just like, think about that first before jumping into moving out. And that's just my my advice to it. But like, yeah, man, I stay till 30 and I'm still very happy about it. So, the grass is green. Grass is also green staying with your parents as well.
I think it's like we consume a lot of social media as well. That's the other thing. And you see people living their best lives and you feel this pressure. And actually, if anyone's seen it, go on YouTube. I think if you type in something, it's like, why I choose to live a boring life. And there's this girl, she's Asian. And she actually talks about like everyone's out there partying and like living their best lives. And she's like, this is why I choose to have a boring life. And she's normalizing boring 9 to 5. It's okay.
Amen. My life is boring as fuck and I love it. Okay, I think we can end it there. So thanks guys for listening in. Thanks for submitting all your questions. We really love it, and it gives us a lot of different things to talk about. So please, if you have anything else that you want to ask us or talk about, send them through, slide into our DMs, and make sure to subscribe and recommend us to your friends.
See you later.
Thank you.
guys.
See ya.
Thanks for listening to the Level Asian podcast, solo episodes. If you enjoyed this one, please support us by giving us 5 stars or sharing it with your friends and family who might enjoy it too. If you have any topics that you would like us to cover, please DM us on Instagram at LevelAsianPod. Also, don't forget to head on over to levelasianpodcast.com to join our email list and receive the latest updates and get notified on when the next episode drops. Catch you on the next episode.